First America, then France, and now in the early 20th century, the Russians staged their revolution, which culminated about from ineffective leadership, poverty, and a lack of reform from their government. The Russian Revolution almost overnight turned their country from a czarist monarchy into a communist state, and much like the French Revolution, also ended with the execution of the royal family. Hello again, and welcome to another episode of The Real History Of, where I take a look at the real people and events that inspired the settings of popular video games. I'm your host Christopher, the video game historian, and on this episode, I'm going to take a look at the real history of the execution of Tsar Nicholas II and his family. To understand why Russia culminated in a bloody revolution that resulted in the murder of the royal court, we first must look at the leader himself. Born May 18, 1868, Nicholas was the oldest son of Tsar Alexander III, and despite the fact that he was next in line for the throne, he was neither trained for nor showed any inclination that he ever wanted to be Tsar. Despite this, he was ascended to the throne in 1894 upon the death of his father and crowned as such in 1896. The same year he ascended, he also married the German Duchess Alexandra of Hesse-Darmstadt. Together they had 4 daughters and 1 son, Alexei, who suffered from hemophilia. It is said that of the two, Alexandra was the one who really had control, as she had a great deal of influence over him, to the point where he would not take his advisor's advice. Nicholas II proved to be a very ineffective leader to the country, as he would lead Russians into 2 costly wars within 10 years of each other. In 1904, not wanting to be left out of the world table of colonizing territories, demanded an expansion into Manchuria. This only provoked the Japanese, which started the Russo-Japanese War. Riots and protests throughout Russia erupted after their defeat. These protests, along with the events of Bloody Sunday in January of 1905, in which the army fired into a crowd of unarmed protesters marching on the Winter Palace, killing over 100, were major factors in contributing to the Russian Revolution of 1905. To defuse this situation, Nicholas II promised reform in the form of a constitution, as well as establishing a Duma, a parliament where the people were given a voice in their government. This would last for a bit until he retracted his concessions and dissolved the Duma. When the First World War broke out, Russia entered the war much to the dismay of the people. Russia was already experiencing poverty, food shortages, and discontent with its leadership, and their losses to Germany only made the people more so. It didn't help matters that Nicholas II took full control of the army in 1915 and upon his travels left Alexandra in charge of the country. Everything finally came to a head in February 1917 when what is known as the February Revolution broke out. Nicholas II lost control of the army garrison in Petrograd, who joined with striking workers. This forced the Tsar to abdicate his throne in March 1917, and with his abdication and his brother's refusal to accept the crown, the Tsarist monarchy of 300 years is effectively dissolved. With the monarchy no more, a new provincial government is established, which is taken over by Lenin and the Bolsheviks in November. The family is then thrown into exile, eventually being held prisoner in the town of Yekaterinburg in the Ural Mountains. July 17, 1918, the royal family is executed. Yakov Uralsky writes in his account of how the execution went down in 1934, which is substantiated by an account of one of his accomplices, Pavel Medvedev. In both accounts, they describe what had happened that night. Medvedev was to round up as many revolvers as he could from the guards and hand them over to Uralsky. He was also able to inform the guards to pay no mind to any gunshots they may hear that night. Uralsky handed out the 12 revolvers to his accomplices and told each one of them who they were going to shoot. Around midnight, the family and their servants were awoken, and after they had washed and dressed themselves, were escorted to the basement under the pretense that there was unrest in the town and it was too dangerous to be on the top floor. In the basement, they were told they were going to pose for a photograph to quell any rumors of their escape. Uralsky fired the first shot, killing Tsar Nicholas II immediately. This triggered everyone else to start shooting in a very unorganized manner. When the shooting was stopped, the daughters, a maid by the name of Anna Demidova and Alexei, were still alive. Uralsky put 2 to 3 more bullets into Alexei and ordered the men to kill the women. After being shot and bayoneted, they were eventually killed by a shot through their heads. Yurovsky later revealed that it was due to their bodices they were wearing, which had diamonds and other precious stones on them, which the bullets and blades couldn't penetrate. 2 of the bodies, Alexei and Demidova, were burned to ashes, while the rest had sulfuric acid poured over them and thrown into a pit. In 1991, the bodies of Nicholas II, Alexandra, and 3 of their daughters were excavated and positively identified using DNA. It was believed for the longest time the true Anastasia made it to America and died in 1984 under the name Anna Anderson. This claim was proven false, however, when the remains of her body, using mtDNA, identified the woman as Polish under the name Franziska Szankowska. So there you have it, everyone. Assassin's Creed Chronicles Russia shows you somewhat of the royal family being executed during the revolution, with Anastasia making it out alive to fight alongside Nikolai as an assassin. Today we know that Anastasia did not really escape the execution chamber, and sadly was killed along with her family. But her legacy and story still live on as a source of inspiration. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments down below. Also follow me on social media through Twitter and Facebook. Until next time.